Hi guys, welcome back to another video. We're working back on our VFC M4 SR16 thing project. Last time I saw you, I showed you that I'd fitted this rail. I'd made a right hash of this part, which, you know, it happens. It's going to be covered up anyway, so it's not a big deal. However, we've already figured out that this barrel is too long. If we put this back on, you can see that it's, I know this isn't all the way down, but it's still way too long. So I said that I want to get the barrel to pretty much finish just before or just after the rail. So that's what we're going to do today. I said to you before, I'm going to do a custom outer barrel, and that's what we're going to do today. Now, I have done this once before. I kind of know what I'm doing-ish. I don't ever claim to know what I'm doing. I just kind of wing it. But I'm pretty sure I know what I'm going to do. So we're going to just crack on and have a go at it. At the end of the day, if I make a mess of it, then I'll have to fix it, or I'll just have to buy another outer barrel, which wasn't that expensive. So it's not the end of the world. Anyway, we need to get this off. Before we do that, I'm just going to quickly mark up whereabouts I want the outer barrel and how long I want it. So we're going to measure it out. So we want the total length. I would say I'd like it to be, yeah, 7.5 inches I think would be a good length. Yeah, I think 7.5. That'd be good. So we're shortening it by a good, what? Just over 2 inches. So that'd be pretty good. Now, obviously, I want to retain the thread here. And this is a new thread. The outer barrel is new. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to cut this section off. And then we're going to move this further down here. And we're going to bin the centre section because we're going for a carbon fibre outer barrel. Now, reasons why you would go for carbon fibre outer barrel, it's less weight. I said from the start I want this to be a seriously lightweight thing. I could potentially go for a carbon fibre handguard and make one of those myself, and I might still do that. But because I've got a Knights Armament rail, I really like it actually, and I'm going to stick with it. And it's quite light, so we're fine. I think we're going to stick with that. So what we need to do then is we need to get this off. I'm going to quickly mark this so I know roughly whereabouts I'm going to aim to have it, even though that's not really going to work for the moment, but still. Going to give me a rough estimate of roughly whereabouts I want it to be. So it kind of lines up with that little indent on the outer barrel there, so I'm just going to make a bit of a mark on it. Like so. Right, let's take this apart. Let's get cracking. So I've since shortened this down a bit more, drill some holes in it so I can still get it on or off. Now look at that stupid short barrel. I have a slightly longer barrel for it, which is this one here, which is going to be about the right length for what I need. So we're going to install that shortly, and then we can obviously make this work. So for now, that's all fine, but I'm going to install this in a little while so I can then fit it in the outer barrel. Now, first things first, we need to decide what we're going to do this end. Now, this, I believe, is a steel piece, and this is alloy. Check that. Not that it really matters at this stage. As you can see, that is steel. This is not. Now, my initial thought was to unwind this because this is normally thread locked on. So I could use some heat, put it in the vise and undo this and get this off. But to be honest with you, I don't really think I need to, because this piece I've got here, the inner diameter, is still a bit larger than this. So let's just measure that. Is what, about 16 mil? Whereas the inner diameter of this is only just outside of that range. We are at 17, I believe, if I ordered this correctly. Yep, we're 17 mil. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm just going to cut this off. And then it will give me something positive to mount to, because we'll be using some epoxy in here, which will pack out anyway. The trick is going to be trying to get it straight. Obviously, that's going to be a little bit tricky. I'm sure a lot of you guys haven't got a lathe, so I want to show this as a DIY. So we're going to cut this anyway, and then we're going to figure things out from there. So what we want to do is measure out the overall length to where it was before. So that's 7 inches. I worked it out at 7.5 from where it mounts into the receiver. So I obviously want to cut a certain amount out of this. To start off with, I'm going to cut it here anyway. I want to lose this center section. And you can see obviously as well that this is going to mate up perfectly with this in here. So what I am going to have to do is I'm going to have to step this for me to be able to slide this in. And I'm probably going to step it pretty much all the way to the end. So then it will push in and hold in there perfectly. Obviously got to make sure it's straight as well. Otherwise, whatever muzzle device we fit is going to be crooked, which again is going to be tricky. There's a few tricks you can use to make that work. So we're going to try that. So first things first, we need to figure out how much of this we're going to cut out. So we're going to cut it from there, probably about here. I imagine the threads probably end around here. So we're going to cut it about there. I'm probably going to cut it here, which gives us a bit of overlap here, which we can shim in and make it slide into the outer barrel. And the carbon fibre tube I'm going to get butting up against this as well. So initially we're going to cut it off here. Guys, so I've cut the outer barrel down now. Now one thing that I meant to do beforehand was to weigh it. Okay, let's just see where we're at for this original outer barrel, and then we'll see what we're going to be like with the carbon fibre one. Hopefully you can see that. 156.72 grams for that outer barrel. We'll weigh that afterwards and see what we like when we've got our shortened one. Now to attach this, I'm going to use some kind of epoxy. This is Airsoft steel. As you see, fast setting, can be drilled, sanded and painted. I'm not bothered by that, but it is for use on metal. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this to the length I need it to. So I'm going to work that out now, figure out how long I want it. I'm going to cut it to length, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it at length, and I'm going to put a inner barrel, probably use one longer than this, inside of that part there, which fits in nice and snug. And this has a chamfer on the end here, which is larger than the tube. So that will centralise in the middle of that. So what I'm going to do is then imagine the piece of carbon fibre tube is here already. I'm going to slide that over the top of that, have it standing upright, and the weight of this is going to centralise the outer barrel, and so will this chamfer here. So it will hold it nice and straight and central. I'll leave it until it goes off. Then I can remove this part, remove the outer barrel, and that will have it fitted nicely in place. Obviously you want to make sure that none of the epoxy goes into here, because otherwise I'm going to have to try and get that out again, which is going to be a real pain. But I do want it to bond nicely to this part here. So what I am going to do is do some sanding here, roughing up. Now what we want to do is cut this to length. I need to figure out exactly how long I need it. So I said the overall length I want to be about 7 inches. So I want to place that exactly where I want it. So I want the overall length to be about that. So you can see it's going to be a short outer barrel, and the barrel I'm using here is this length, should be about right for that. So what I now want to do is, remember what I'm going to do is I'm going to step this. So I'm going to file this down and step it so it fits internally inside that. So what I need to do now is figure out how long I'm going to need this outer barrel. So I want it to be about there. So I'm going to mark it there. So that is how long I want to cut this piece to. Now, be careful when cutting carbon fibre. It is crazy itchy if you get the dust on your body. So be really careful. Well ventilated area as well if you can. And use a really fine saw to cut through it. I have actually tried using a pipe cutter before, and that actually just delaminates it and it comes apart. So you don't want to use that. You do want to use a saw of some description. You can wrap tape around it, which does help stop it splintering. But I've got a really fine saw I'm going to use to cut this down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just quickly offer this up against where the rail is. So the rail is going to be like that. The barrel nut goes in there and touches the receiver. So that will go down to the receiver end there. And you can see the outer barrel is poking out just at the end there. In fact, I do probably want that a tiny bit longer. So I'm actually going to just cut this outer barrel just a little bit longer than the mark I've done, maybe by 5mm. So I'm going to go and cut that now, and I'll come back to you guys in a minute. Guys, so outer barrel is now cut, or the carbon tube is cut. That's going to take me through to about 7.5, no problem at all. So that's all good. I'm happy with that. And so I'm going to step this probably down to about here. So yes, happy with that. That is perfect for what I need it for now. So the plan is, what I shall do, I'll put the inner barrel through there first. And if I drop this part of the outer barrel over it, there we go. And that's now got that sitting nice and straight because it's using the outer barrel to hold its position. And that's what I'm going to use to hold it nice and straight while I bond it in place. You can see I probably cut this end a little on the wonk. You can see I probably could have cut this a little bit straighter, but that should hold it nice and straight while I epoxy that in place. So that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to step this down so I can slide that in and then epoxy at the other end. Got my epoxy ready. Usually the epoxy comes like this with this little tray piece, which is quite good for mixing in. And basically what you do is you mix even amounts of both of these parts. If you check on the packaging, it will tell you how much you need to use. Then you get your little spatula, get it all mixed up and get it all basically the same colour. Right, I'm pretty confident we're good there. Right, so I'm going to apply some epoxy on this. As you can see, it is quite thick, which is what we want. Right, so I'm going to pop that over to one side now. This takes 5 minutes to go off, so we're all right for a few minutes. So I'm going to pop the outer barrel in for now. I'm going to slot the carbon fibre tube over that. Just working it back and forth so it seats in there nicely. And then I want to obviously get the other barrel in there. There we go. That's in there nice and tight. Give it a good push and that will hold it nice and straight with that inner barrel in there, holding it in position. Squidge some of this around, just reinforcing this base a bit. Obviously I don't want to make a real mess of this, but equally I want it to hold nicely. But at the end of the day, epoxy is going to be your best bet. There are lots of different ones you could use. This is just what I happen to have laying around. And again, that's going to take about 5 minutes to go off. So I'm going to leave it outside so it can ventilate. And I'll come back to you guys once that's all done. Guys, so while the epoxy is drying, we obviously need to step this down now, so that's going to fit inside that. Now I've decided I'm going to sort of take it down to about there, where I've just put that mark in the anodizing there. So I'm going to have that much sort of sticking out, and that is the right size for the outer barrel as well. So I need to step this down. Now obviously, if I try and file this, I'm not going to get it central and it's going to go all over the place. So what I want to do here is be able to spin it and take it down at the same time. Now, obviously I don't have a lathe here and I'm looking to do something a bit more DIY for you guys. So we're going to try and spin this. Now, how are we going to do that? Using a nut and a bolt. I've got a nut and bolt now that fits perfectly inside this. There is a tiny little bit of wobble. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pack that with a bit of tape around the outside. And again, this is not permanent. This is just to hold this in place so I can then use a drill to do this, which is what we're going to be using. So I'm going to use some sellotape. Wrap that round. I think that's going to be too much. Oh no, look at that, perfect. That slots on there nicely. And now I can do this nut up. I don't need to do it super tight, just give it a quick nip up by hand. And now that will be nice and central inside there. So what we can then do is pop that into the drill. And when we spin this, that's much better. Nice and straight now. Lovely. Right, okay, so what we're going to do then to try and step this is, I know roughly whereabouts I want that to be, so I'm going to mark it. Again, I'm going to use this pipe grip to do that. I can see where my mark is, so I'm going to wind this into position. I've wound that in there. I'm just going to give it a quick nip. I'm going to roll it round. And that'll give a mark as to where I need to take it down to. There we go, there's our mark. Okay, so this just needs nipping up a little bit. That's still running true. Right, I'm going to use a nice flat file. Place that down there, and I'm going to spin it, and then just hold the file on there and gradually take this down. And you can see we're starting to take good amounts off there. Now it's going to take a while, so I'm going to pause you guys for now. I'm going to carry on, and I'll come back to you once I've got it down to where I need it. Guys, there we go. So that's all done now. Did take quite a while because there was quite a lot to take off, but it's a bit hot now. But we managed to get it down to the size we needed. So there we go. Step that down quite nicely now. Now, I think I've got it about right. It could probably do with another mil taken off, but I'm going to see if it will slide into that. I think it just will, you know. We're a tiny bit out, but I think a little bit of persuasion, we'll be able to get that in there, no problem. And that'll be a tight clearance fit. So I'm probably not going to be able to use that same epoxy. I'm probably going to have to use something else. But that's going to be a really tight fit in there, so that's good. All right, so let's see how our outer barrel's doing. Let's pull that out. There we go. Yeah, that is on there, nice. Nice and tight. So basically what we now want to do is press that in there. Now, I probably could help it along a little bit by just opening this out a little bit with some emery cloth. That's going in there. I think a little bit more, and I think we'll be okay. So I'm just going to open this out a tiny bit inside here for clearance. I'll be back with you in a moment. Okay guys, so I've opened that out now. That goes on there nice and straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get another inner barrel. I'm going to get a longer one, so that will centralise that, so I can bond that in place. I'll go and get that, and then I can show you what I'm going to do from there. There we go. What I've done is I've slipped a inner barrel inside that goes through both ends, and that will centralise that, so I know that's nice and straight. So I'm going to knock up a little bit more of that adhesive. So that amount of that. Amount of that. I think that's going to be fine. So now what I want to do is just retract that slightly from there. We'll apply some adhesive onto here. I don't need to rough the area up because I've already roughed up inside the barrel. And also this has been filed, so this is obviously nicely roughed up anyway, so that's not a problem. There we go. So now I'm just going to slide that into position, give it a bit of a twist as it goes in, give it a bit of a push, And I want to get this excess off. That seems nice and straight. That's sliding nicely through there, so I know it's all aligned. So I'm going to clean that off. There's a bit of excess. That should be fine. And there we go. All I now need to do is just let that set. And then we're all good. And that is your carbon fibre outer barrel. So we're now at 95.30. I can't remember exactly what I had before, but this is a lot lighter. So we're going to leave that there for now, guys. I'm going to let this set overnight. I'm going to have a look at this again tomorrow, and you'll join me again tomorrow, and we'll see where we're at, and we can reinstall it onto the rifle and see what we get. Okay, guys, so you join me another day where the resin has gone off now. It's nice and hard now, and that is holding that perfectly. So this is going to be our new outer barrel. Now, what I now need to do is obviously fit the hop unit in. Now, if you remember when I first got this, the hop unit I actually ordered was the incorrect one. I actually ordered one for guide hop, which is essentially what happens with a lot of the VFCs that have the gas block with the sort of adjustment on the end, and there's a bar which comes down which then adjusts the hop with this arm here. Now obviously I don't have that on this, nor am I going to install that, so this is no good to me. So what I need to do is to fit myself a different hop unit, and what I got is a maple leaf. Now this is designed for GHK, but I'm told it will also fit VFC. So I really hope it does, because that will make things a lot easier for me, considering I've already purchased it. So what we're going to be doing is installing this with our different hop rubbers, a nub, and a different outer barrel. Now the outer barrel in question I had planned to use for this one is a black type bore. I think it's a 602. It is quite short though. I actually underestimated quite how short it was, and what's going to basically happen is it's going to end up being a bit too short. It's not going to be supported by the outer end here, so I actually need it to be longer. So what I think I'm going to do instead is I'm going to modify this Mad Bull. You can just about make that out. It's a Mad Bull Black Python type ball. This is an AEG outer barrel though, which generally obviously is not going to work for what we need. This is an old scrap AEG that I had kicking around. Actually just used the body, but you can modify these outer barrels to work in gas blowbacks. There's a few modifications required to do that, so I'm going to do that with this one. So the difference we have between a AEG and GBB outer barrel is we've got the hop window, which is basically got this extra piece here, which if you notice, if we offer it side to side, is actually about the same size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to file this part off. I'm going to open the front out slightly, and you'll also notice that there is a groove around the outer barrel on the front and the rear, and 2 slots either side as well. There's also a slot across the back here, which is correct for the gas blowback one as well. So not too much modification required. I'm basically going to lose this section here, file or cut a groove in this front part here for the hop rubber, and then obviously any grooves or anything we need to make on the side we can just file in. Okay, so first of all I have opened out this window which we need, taken that edge off, and that again is the correct depth for that to work, no problem, so we're happy with that. I now need to make this groove, so I need to offer up whereabouts that needs to be. How I'm going to make this groove is I'm going to use this tool here, the pipe cutter. It needs to be quite thick though, so I'm going to run the pipe cutter around first, and then once I've done that, I'm then going to use a saw just to open that out slightly, or a saw blade. So I need to mark out roughly where it needs to go, and then I'll show you what I've done from there. So I've made the mark on the outer barrel now, which if we look at this one, I am going to file some off the end here. We can see that groove lines up perfectly with that, as does the window. And again, I'm probably going to take some off the end here because this is slightly longer. So now to make this wider, which is going to be big enough to accept that hop rubber, I'm going to be using my drill. So basically what I'm going to be doing is having the saw blade in there and then just back and forth trying to open that out. But to make it a bit easier, I'm going to put it in the drill. It's a bit long for this at the moment, but it should still work okay. So I can spin that and I'll just hold the saw in place and it will open that out. Okay, we can see we've got a nice mark around the outside of that now, which is a bit of a groove, which I now should be able to use the blade. It should drop into that, that's it. And then I'm just going to spin it. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, we've got a bit of a groove there now. Let's just see how deep this one is. It's quite deep, to be fair, so I need to go quite a bit deeper with this one. So there we go, that groove is done now. It goes all the way down to the bottom of that groove for the rubber. So that's all good, so that's fine. So we now need to figure out what the next bit we need to modify is. So looking at these two, we've got that first groove. The second groove would be where you're locking in, which should be fine because we've got the locking edges there, so we shouldn't need to worry about that one too much. There is a groove here though, which I do need to replicate on here. Now we might have to shorten it slightly before we do that. Yes, I'm going to have to shorten it just a touch because it's not going to go all the way on. So that's fine. So I can just file that off. Because this is an aluminium outer barrel, it's not, going to be particularly hard to do. So I'm just going to file that off slightly until we're level. And then that should go in no problem. So I'll do that now. Okay, so I've slightly shortened it now, down to about the same length as this one here. Grooves all line up. So I should be able to put the rubber on now. That locks in nicely. Right, so hopefully that will hold in place. So we can slide the outer barrel in. Yeah, it's going in okay now. So that will slide in position. Okay, so I can see that where it locks in place, I just need to extend those notches down a touch, which will enable it to fit in position correctly. And that should be fine. But that's fitting in there nicely at the end, so that's good. So I've got those lining up now. So this should push into position now and lock in place. Fingers crossed. There we go. So that's now going to hold that barrel in place. So that's good. So next thing we need to do is to fit the nub, if you like, in place. There we go, that's gone in there nice. So now the hop arm can go back in. You can see now if that's lined up. Hopefully as I apply hop, you can see that pushes the nub down to give more hop, which is what we want. So that's good. Okay guys, so I've got it together. So the nice thing is now is that this will work with our outer barrel. So if I slide that into our new outer barrel, we can see there's the adjuster wheel, which opens up nicely in there so we can get at it. The only downside at the moment is that when we're running our 416 barrel nut, which is designed for guide hop, we can't get at the wheel. So it's something we're going to have to sort of work around at some point. I'm probably going to have to make sure I tighten this to the receiver, figure out where it sits. I'm going to have to cut a small window or drill a hole so I can at least get at the wheel. But it's something we can figure out at a later stage. we were always going to have that problem with this barrel nut anyway. So anyway, so now I need to fit this into the bushing. I have no idea what they call this, but it's sort of your feed ramp and bushing for the bulk carrier. So for the nozzle, so that slots in there. I can then feed this into here, and that locks in there nicely. So now I've got an exceptionally long outer barrel, so I need to mark it now whereabouts I want to cut it. And I'm literally going to cut it so it is level with the end of the barrel. So I'm doing a scratch mark in there. So I now know whereabouts I need to cut it. There we go. So I'm going to use my pipe cutter. Once you've done this though, you do need to crown the barrel again. What I mean by crowning is if we look at the barrel itself, it looks very thin around the outside edge here, and that's because it's sort of chamfered in. That's what we call the crown. So we need to re-crown the barrel so that basically it opens out at the end and there are no sort of swarf or anything that are going to catch a BB in flight. Now again, a lot of people will probably be saying, why are you going to this extreme to just use this outer barrel? Well, to be honest with you, I didn't really want to go down the route of buying another barrel because, I mean, I bought two and they were both too short for what I needed. So I've had to go down a different route. I didn't want to spend any more on an outer barrel just to get a proof of concept up and running. And if I want to at a later stage, I might change this barrel for something a bit better. That looks about right there. So I'm just going to wind it in a touch and then roll it round. So tighten it down a bit more. Around we go a few times. In again. For the sake of, there we go, that's come off. So there we go. And you can see that is a lot smaller than that opening there. Part of that is because there's a lot more material, but the other part is because we've pushed material to the inside here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to file that off smooth with a really, really fine file. And then I'm going to re-crown it. There's a few things you can use to re-crown, but before I do that, I'm just going to check how long we've got it, make sure it's about right. There we go, right at the end, exactly what I wanted. I tend to use one of these initially, which is like it's like a carbide bit that you can use to sort of route and stuff like that. That will do the initial cut, and then I'll use like a sanding stone to try and make it a nice smooth insert there. You can see we're getting a nice smooth edge there. I'm going to keep going a bit more. There we go. Seems like a reasonable crown. Now I'm going to use this sanding stone that I use to just even it out a bit. Again, just push that on the end. Again, not too hard. It's looking fairly smooth on the end there. Now, one thing we are going to need to do now is to clean this barrel because we've got all kinds of junk down there. So I'm going to need to clean it. I haven't got any bits and pieces to do that in here just yet, so I'll do that in a little while at a later stage. But for now, I'm quite happy we've done what we need to for this barrel. So we can reassemble. So that should go in there, no problem now. Then lock in. There we go, that's right at the end, exactly where we wanted it. So that is now supported by that bushing we fitted on the end there. That's in there really nice. So now we can reassemble it to the rifle. So we want obviously a feed ramp down. Put the barrel nut on. Okay, so that's in there so far. I just need to tighten that down a little bit. Give that a nip. There's our outer barrel fitted now. And I'm going to refit the rail. There we go. And then obviously I can refit these parts. Now I'm going to do a bit of work with these in a little while anyway, so I'm going to leave this off for now. But that is exactly where I wanted that barrel to finish. Perfectly there. It means fitting any suppressors or anything on the end there. It's nice and short, giving us a nice profile there. So that's exactly what I was after. So there we go. That's how to make a carbon fibre outer barrel for your gbbr if you need to. Yeah, this is just to create that outer barrel look, to shorten it down to the right kind of length for what we need here. And yeah, really pleased with that so far, and it's come out really good. So any questions you've got, feel free to whack them in the comments. I'll see you guys in the next one.